Salam köpçülük. Ben aldı bilen Rafto Fondi ve Norvegiya Uyghur Cemiyeti 8 Mart Ayollar Bayramı münasibetle ötküzgen söhbet programımızga sözgü teklif kılınganlığımga rahmet eytimen. Ben vatanımız Şarkı Türkistan, Ürümçi şehrinden kelgen Caza Lager Şahidi Kalbinur Sıdık bolumen. Ben Ürümçi'de 28 yıl başlanmış mektepte okuvchi boldum. 2017 yıldan başlap erler lageri ve kız ayollar lagerlarda Xitay tili ders ötüşke mecburlandım. 2019 yıldan başlap Gollandiyada yaşayatıman. Ben 2017 yıldan başlangan bu dehşetlik zulümnün en qattiq ziyankeşliğe uçurganlar Uyghur ayolları ekanligiga şahit boldum. Milyonlagan Uyghur ayolları mecburi tug'ut cheklash, mecburi emgak, mecburi tarbiyalash, bolalardan mecburi ayirib etilish, mecburi to'y ve jinsiy dafsanchiligining asosliq nishoni bo'lib kelmoqda. Ko'p tuqqan ayollar turmalarga, lagerlarga solandi. Az tuqqan ayollar bo'lsa mecbur holda uzuk soldirildi, tug'maslik operatsiyasi qilindi. Ularning bolalari yetim yesirlar lagerlarga solinib, ota-onasidan ayirib etildi. Ko'p qism ayollar erlardan mahrum qilinib, Xitoy qo'shmaq tuqqanlari bilan bir uy yashashga majburlandi. Yosh qiz ayollar bo'lsa, Xitoy erlarga yotiq bo'lib, yurtida qilish yoki Xitoy o'lkalariga avatilib, qul o'rinda ishlashdan iborat qo'sh tahdid ichida jon talashmoqda. Lagerga solangan ayollar bo'lsa, texnik qo'rqinchli zulmat ostida o'limni kutmoqda. Ularning sochlari butunlay tushiritilgan, siyosiy mahbus kiyimlarini kiygan, tömür kamerlarga solangan, ular tan jazosiga, jinsiy dafsanchilikka uchrab turdi. Her haftada odat to'xtatish, tug'maslik dorisi yeydi. Bu qatma-qat zulm lager ishchi va sirtidagi yosh va yashangan barliq Uyg'ur ayollarini o'xshamagan bahonalar bilan qiyin qistoq ichiga olmoqda. Bu uchuqdan uchuq qirg'inchilik siyosatidir. Uyg'ur ayollari ijtimoiy jihatdan huquqdan mahrum, iqtisodiy jihatdan qul, e'tiqodiy jihatdan dushman, jismoniy jihatdan o'yinchoq, ruhiy jihatdan majruh qilinmoqda. Bu dehşetli eksploatatsiya ayollar huquqiy e'tirofga erishgan 100 yildan keyinmi o'zini eng qudratli, madaniyatli chaqlaydigan Xitoy davlatida hali ham yuz bermoqda. Men kishilarning farqli rayon, madaniyat, irqiy va e'tiqod jihatdagi farqlarni bir chetga qo'yib qo'yib, hammamizga o'rtaq bo'lgan insoniy burchi bilan Uyg'ur qirg'inchiligiga alohida ko'ngil bo'lishni, bo'lib Uyg'ur ayollarining, Uyg'ur onalarining ustida yurgizilayotgan bu zulmga qat'iy sukut qilmasligini bekmi umid qilaman. Rahmat.
Okay, thank you all so much for joining us for this discussion about how Chinese policies in Xinjiang, also in the region of Xinjiang, also known as East Turkestan to many Uyghurs, is affecting women. But before we start, I first want to sort of introduce this event and some of the panelists the two panelists that we're going to be speaking with today. Thank you so much to the Rafto Foundation for Human Rights and the Norwegian Uyghur Committee, excuse me, for organizing this event. So the purpose of this event is to particularly talk about the impacts of China's policy on Uyghur women and other ethnic minority women in the region. And I'm sorry to say that in the few years that I've written about this issue, the impacts have gotten significantly worse. We've seen reports over the past year of everything from forced sterilization to forced abortion and other systematic abuses of women's reproductive rights, as well as many ex-detainees testifying to the presence of systematic rape and sexual violence in the mass internment camps that have been euphemistically termed transformation through education camps by the Chinese government. I'm Megha Rajagopalan. I'm a reporter for Buzzfeed News based in London. I've written about issues affecting Uyghurs for a number of years, including when I was based in China from 2012 to 2018. I I would love to introduce my the two panelists that are with us here today. If they wouldn't mind turning on their cameras and mics, that'd be great. Okay, so Rushan Abbas is the founder and executive director of the Campaign for Uyghurs. She is one of the most prominent Uyghur rights activists working in the United States. She started her activism work when she was still a student. She organized and led pro-democracy demonstrations at Xinjiang University in 1985 and 1988. And since she arrived in the US in 1989, she has produced research reports and advocated at the highest levels of the US government on behalf of the plight of Uyghurs. And our next panelist, Shayida Ali, is also based in the US. She's a software engineer, and her father was detained under the Chinese government's campaign, and she has been advocating for her father's freedom as well as the freedom of all Uyghurs, and worked to raise awareness to these issues through social media and other channels. And I'm really excited to learn from these two panelists today. And I think I'm going to spend maybe about 20 minutes or 25 minutes of our 45 minutes here with my questions. And then I would love it if we could open up to all of you. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to put it in the chat box at any time. And then once we get to the Q&A portion, we can raise them. So I guess I think this video was a really good way to frame this discussion, because she talks in detail about the issues that Uyghur women are facing today. So I wanted to ask Rushan, I know that you have been campaigning for governments to label this policy a genocide since well before any governments made that decision. So now, of course, the United States, Canada, I believe Holland as well, have used that label after many years of campaigners like yourself calling for that. I was wondering if you could walk us through that argument. What makes you believe that this should be considered a genocide? And I was wondering if you could especially talk about the issues with women's reproductive rights.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you so much for the Rafto Human Rights Foundation and the Norwegian Uyghur Committee for putting together this event. What Kalnur Siddiq talked earlier, that is every single acts of the 5 elements of the Geneva Convention's determination on genocide. So to me, that shouldn't have been argued from the beginning. Ever since 2014, the concentration camps were first started to build, we knew what was coming. The crematoria building next to the concentration camps. So the struggle of the Uyghurs is not just about us, the Uyghur people, or about the future, but this is about the future of humanity and the type of the world that we inherit, our children will inherit from us. So many people find it really hard to believe that at this moment, such an unprecedented magnitude that's unseen since World War II, something like this is happening in the concentration camps and in slavery. And the women are being targeted. So I don't want to repeat what we just heard from Kalnur, but the atrocity determination, the genocide determination has been a very hard-fought battle since we have been advocating for those millions of voiceless and defenseless people.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please.
Yeah. So many prefer to ignore the warning signs, but I have been using the word genocide for years now, and now it has been confirmed by the United States, Canadian, and the Dutch Parliament. But we need to see a swift action to stop it. Thank you.
when people talk about using this term genocide, I think that the pushback is always that what we aren't seeing here is evidence of mass killing, which I think in the popular imagination is always associated with genocide. Of course, as you pointed out, under international law, it's actually a much broader term. But I was wondering if you could sort of talk about which of the policies that are being enacted there have led you to in this belief that this is best described as a genocide?
All 5 of them, the children taking from the Uyghur people, more than 500,000 Uyghur people are taken to state-run orphanages, and women facing sterilization, mass abortion, and the basically not having any kind of rights to their own body, and taking Uyghurs out of our homeland from East Turkestan and dispersing them to other parts of China proper. Winter reported very early, actually, like early 2019, late 2018, they already reported more than 500,000 Uyghur people taken out of the Uyghur region. And just look at it, the last summer, the seize of 13 tons of human hair. That's probably, perhaps, a portion of what's being taken from prisoners and the seized. But that is a product of genocide. Yeah. So if, how can this image not pierce our conscience? So I wonder, if that's the hair of my sister, who's benefiting from my sister's slave labor. As you know, my sister is taken, she's a retired medical doctor. And those millions, we are talking about more than 3 million. More than 3 million Uyghurs taken to concentration camps, sent to forced labor facilities in China proper. They are professors, they are writers, doctors, they are successful business owners. So this is like attack on the thought leaders, anybody who can lead or produce the identity of the Uyghur people. So when you look at it, everything actually, Khaldunor pretty much talked about all the crimes that the Chinese regime is conducting against the Uyghur people. If just one element of the 5 the elements of the Geneva Convention is happening, we can call it genocide. But right now, all 5 are happening. And if we look at the history, in the beginning of 1930s, countries around the world continued to do business with Germany, avoiding the warning signs coming out with the Holocaust and the concentration camps. And they avoided acknowledging what's happening, the bordering human rights abuses for the sake of economic trade at the cost of millions of lives. The countries in Europe paid the price of economic cooperation with Nazi Germany, with bombs blowing up over their heads. So the Allied countries, they tried to claim the ignorance. They tried to defend themselves with their economic ties with Germany by hiding, behind the ignorance. But today, we have the information to act. We know it's genocide. Overwhelmingly, there are evidence and, good work of people like yourself, reporters reporting, the experts analyzing Chinese government's own data and leaked documents, and witnesses, former inmates, are testifying. So even after the painful chapters of the history, we still find the international community is crippled by and even complicit in Chinese regime's genocide right now, just for the sake of economic cooperation or the sake of money. The Chinese government is basically buying the compliances of the entire international community, United Nations, the World Health Organizations, NBA, Hollywood. Where are they, all these celebrities always so vocal about any kind of social injustice? Where are the feminists? Where are the organizations supposed to defend women's rights and children's rights?
It's a very interesting point, particularly about civil society organizations that typically stand up for women and children's rights. I definitely want to return to this matter of the international response as you raised it. Let's first, I want to bring Shayida in here. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. You've been such a vocal advocate for your father. I know that, at least from my reporting, that sometimes this can be really hard to do because, of course, it's a lot of emotional pressure for you, and as well, like many people may be concerned about, the Chinese government retaliating and other things like that. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you what was it like making the decision to speak about this publicly? Do you think that it's been effective? And what are your hopes for your activism?
Thank you, Megha, for the question, and also thank you for our Rafta Foundation for organizing this event. Yeah, so as it's been mentioned before, this is going on for years, and I was not actively advocating for the human rights, like for many years, but I just started this last year. The reason behind it is because of my father's detention. It has bring major financial and emotional difficulties on me and my study in abroad, and also because of growing up in China, I have this fear of fear of the government doing something wrong to my father and the rest of my family. So I was challenging myself, and I was having a lot of conversations with myself over the years, and I feel ashamed that I was not speaking. Every day is torturing myself because living in a free world and I was not able to speak. And then finally, once I was able to stand up by myself, I can support myself financially. And once I have that strength to do something, I just started. I go ahead and try to speak up and do something that I couldn't do for many years, do something that I was dreaming and imagining like every night before doing this. The fear and the stress that has left inside of me for many years, finally I feel better. I feel I breathe freely for one day after I started to speak up. And also the another reason is for this is I am a lucky girl who's living in a free country, working, studying, and and freely with my own will. And also, I'm a person who is able to love freely, which is a privilege, which is an impossible thing for the girls who's still living in East Turkestan. So if I don't do something now, I feel like I don't deserve any of this. I feel like I have this responsibility to speak up, and that made me to be active. And even though I couldn't bring a lot of attentions, or I couldn't bring more awareness at others, but I am doing my best and trying to raise awareness in my spare time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that you've used social media as part of your activism. I guess for me personally, like having written about this issue for a few years, I've noticed that the environment on social media has gotten significantly worse in the past, maybe the past couple of years. I think as the issue has, more people have become aware of the issue, I think there's just more attention to it. I was just curious if you could talk a bit about what has the process been like of using social media in your activism? Like how have you found it as a Uyghur woman on social media talking about these issues that have suddenly become very controversial in the West? Yeah.
So social media is right now the most powerful tool for us to raise awareness, I think, because once I started, I didn't know anybody, but But since I started to provide more details and more evidence, people started to put their attentions in it, and then start to ask me questions, writing me messages, and about, is it really happening? All of the question that I had first is it truth? Is it really happening? Do you have proof? But I'm glad to answer all of them because yeah, if someone who's living in a free world, it would be so hard to believe all of them. So I did my best and explain it. And right now, a lot of people having already aware of the situation, and they also helping us to be part of this, to stand against China, because one person's power, one person's voice might be might not be as powerful as many of our supporters. So yeah, I think it's been very helpful.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to both of you about how advocacy on this issue has changed, which is something I'm really interested in. Obviously, we've seen the US in particular ramp up policy measures in response to the atrocities. But as Rushan pointed out, there's still a lot more that can be done. I was curious to ask both of you about how your conversations with policymakers in the US and Europe have changed. Shayida, I think I read that your father was part of a submission to the UK Parliament as well, his case. So I'd be curious to talk to both of you about that, whether you found that policymakers are now more responsive. Is there kind of more openness to measures like sanctions and other tools, or have you found that the process is still sort of as slow as it was when this issue was known about by less people in the West? And Rushan, do you want to start? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, on how leaders should approach on China, and especially when we are talking about Shayida's family, my sister, and every single Uyghurs in diaspora. If you talk to every one of them, they have a missing family members. That should be at the forefront of any kind of dialogue with China. Genocide and hostage taking, and they taking the family members of the people who are living in foreign countries, like I am American citizen. My sister is taken as a retaliation for my activism. Any of those kind of crimes are not China's internal business. Genocide is not China's internal business, and human rights is not a secondary issue. So that should be kept in any kind of conversation with China, and the economic tools must be used, because money is all that the Chinese Communist Party cares about. So we should hit where it hurts the most. Economic sanctions, and we have this Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act passed, and it's a law right now. And we should implement that, start to implement that. And continue with push for a wider sanctions, and addressing the forced labor. There are some corporates actually openly lobbying against the weakening, or try not to, trying to get intervene with the Uyghur Human Rights, Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Many international community is complicit, they are actively complicit in this genocide through the economic relationship with China. So any leaders in the democratic countries, they should wake up, not just for the future of the Uyghurs, but saving the future of this world. Because what China is doing, undermine the rule of law, getting away with everything, making threats against anybody who is saying anything about the Chinese government. They are attacking, the diplomats are attacking. Even the US, Chinese embassy in US, how they try to defend using the platform we have the Twitter, which is not open for the general public in China, but the Chinese officials using those tools and those free platforms we have in the democratic countries to spreading their propagandas, attacking and threatening the other countries and the activists, and the attacking those brave Uyghur women who are testifying, that people like Zumrat Davut, Tursunay, and Kalbunur. And those are the kind of things that we should not allow them continue to doing. While, you know, Chinese regime has dehumanized Uyghur women, calling them baby-making machines on the Twitter. Why are they still allowed to using the Twitter? Why we are not banning those propaganda Chinese state-owned media outlets? Why are they spreading those disinformation and the CCP's false narratives and propagandas? And while personally attacking, publicly attacking the human rights defenders. So there are so many things that needs to be done, but unfortunately, you know, being very slow. And the Olympics, I just want to add one more thing here. While China is conducting a genocide, there are governments recognizing that it's genocide. Why a genocidal regime is hosting Olympics in less than a year from today? We are repeating the Berlin 1936 games, which Hitler opened, you know, while Holocaust was happening. And we are failing the vow never again to support those, you know, while we support these genocide games again. So the countries should boycott and the, you know, try to strip off Beijing is hosting the Olympic Games rights and move that. If that doesn't happen, then should boycott.
And I wanted to ask, you've outlined a number of policy measures here in a number of different areas. I was wondering, you know, how do you see, some of these are obviously not going to be enacted by the US government, like for instance, the things about Twitter that you mentioned, but for the kind of US-based policy measures, how receptive do you see the Biden administration being to adopting some of these?
Well, President Biden is the actually first person from a very high level in administration to, well, actually, let me go back here. When Biden was, President Biden was campaigning, he's the first person to naming its genocide last summer. So I think, you know, they're adjusting their initially a little bit of mixed signals to the Chinese regime, and to be clear, and especially last, you know, a couple of days ago, we saw actually really hopeful signs coming out from the White House, and the Secretary Blinken has been very supportive from the beginning of the determination. And so there are like several other important pieces of legislation, like the Sister City Transparency Act, which is a clear propaganda, the sister city that the China is pushing is clear propaganda for China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is the main reason why we are facing this genocide. So that you know, measures like Sister City Transparency Act and the other measures to address the Confucius Institutes and the resolution on Olympics, those should move forward very quickly. And I am very hopeful that the Biden administration will support those legislations, and especially, you know, we are up on the, you know, clock is running for the Olympics. We should act quickly to moving the Olympics. If they are not moved, then we must pursue the diplomatic boycott.
And Shayida, I wanted to put a sort of similar question to you. What has your experience been like working with policymakers in the West and informing them about your father's case and advocating for him?
So in my experience, I don't have many experience to reach out meeting or speaking with the policymakers, but I was able to meet with my local senators and representative, and I was able to inform them the situation, and they were very supportive. And also right now in the US there is 2 bills that's supporting Uyghur human rights and also the forced labor prevention, but I think this is not yet enough, and I think there is still a lot needs to be done. For example, I'm living in Massachusetts, and we still have Confucius Institute here in the universities, and we still can boycott the companies that's currently doing business in here which involves Uyghur human rights issues. So I think there's still a lot needs to be done. And also you have mentioned that like I have submitted the case to the UK Parliament, but it's just one step that needs to be taken, but there is no not actual measurable steps have been taken yet.
Okay. When did you make the submission?
It's the beginning of the year.
I see. So you're sort of waiting for steps to take place. Yeah. I'm curious why make the submission to the UK Parliament instead of the US where you live?
So I was informed by the others that they are also reviewing the case and also doing measurables acts. So that's why I submitted to there. So I haven't done it in US yet.
I see.
But if there is a way, I'll definitely try to do so.
Okay, so we're at about 1/2 now. So I would love for if anyone has questions, if you could just drop them into the chat box. That would be really great. Yeah, and I guess while we're waiting, I do have another question for both of you. So both of you are sort of involved in this kind of ongoing process of advocacy. And Rushan, I know you do research as well. And I think it must be hard to do this from living abroad, especially because communication back to the region is hampered by censorship and surveillance and other obstacles. I was curious if both of you could talk about how do you keep abreast of the situation? How do you make sure your knowledge is current? And particularly when we're talking about some of these very sensitive issues that would be sensitive to any woman, things like, birth control and abortion and abuses like rape and sexual violence. How do you keep abreast of how those issues are happening in the region? Rushan, I'll start with you again, if that's okay.
Yeah, that is actually an extremely good point. Very, very good point. Thank you. That's extremely important. As you have been into the region, you know how information blockade, and you know how the Chinese government is trying so hard to keep everything in a like we call it, just making the walk upside down and cover it and just keep everything there. But because of very, very brave individuals, there are so many leaked information are coming out, as we know. So many Chinese government's own documents, much of it comes from CCP itself. And also we do speak with survivors. There are like a handful of them coming out speaking publicly, but there are a lot actually afraid of coming out speaking publicly because of their family members. They fear for their other family members left in East Turkestan. But there are a lot still, we speak to, and they especially countries like Turkey has a lot of Uyghur people there, and the people from Central Asia. So where we have access to first and the second-hand testimonies that we collect, and it's important to keep the good communication with different governments too, to obtain as much as info as we can. And Radio Free Asia is doing amazing job. Radio Free Asia Uyghur service, The brave reporters are reaching out to get information. And it's like putting small pieces of puzzle together. They make like hundreds of phone calls to get one information out. For example, my sister's case, as much as I was being so vocal and they bring up to everywhere, and they made that this pretty high profile case, but we still didn't get any information, even confirmation of her detainment. But Radio Free Asia did that after making hundreds of phone calls. Finally, Shukrat Ushur from RFA Uyghur Service, he got that one word out from one of the Chinese employee in the hospital where she used to work, that she was detained. So it's difficult, it's extremely hard work. And when we talk to people like yourself who are knowledgeable with situation, and the other people who are directly involved with China or Chinese policies or human rights, they know what's happening. But majority of the general public, when you look at even in the United States, 80–90% of the regular people, ordinary people, don't know what's happening. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have to continue to do whatever we can using different venues. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Ashley, there are some people reaching out to us from China, like Chinese people actually, using double VPNs and reaching out to us and giving us some information as well.
And Shayida, I wanted to ask you the same question, both in a general sense and then also just because, specifically it's your family situation that I'm sure is changing very quickly as well. How do you keep in touch with family as well?
So unfortunately, after my father's detention, most of my family members, they deleted me from the social media apps, or WeChat or any type of communication. So I don't have information about how are they doing, but I have friends who's studying inner China, and also they can give me some information once in a while, because once they go back, because they know where my house is, and they can check up for me and give me some little information. But that's very few, and it's like it's very few. It happens very rare. But another way that I get information about my homeland, which is Kashgar, or about the whole diaspora, is I was often checked the Chinese social media, Weibo, even though a lot of information was censored there, but there are still brave people who's trying to express their feeling, their frustration through what's happening. And also so every time when the situation change or there's new things that's happening, things like that, it will be somehow on there, and then you will somehow know it. And also as Sister Rushan has mentioned, RFA is doing a very great job. Like, they are doing the impossible, I think, because China and the whole region is like a black box. It's very hard to get out of any information, but they were able to do so many phone calls and also just to get one information about those people. I personally don't have my father's current location or his current situation, but they were able to help many other victims to find out their situation. I was volunteering to translate their phone script to English, and then I found out a lot, and I was impressed by their work. And even though it's very distressing to hear the people's situation, but they are doing most of the great jobs to provide this information.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess for people who don't know, could you please explain, why is it so hard when you live abroad to contact your family via WeChat, and why is it that WeChat is the only way to be able to do this? Other than the phone.
So as far as I know, their phone was installed. There is an app. I think it's kind of a security app that checks their communication and where the information is coming from, maybe their IP address, things like that has been monitored. So that's why even my mom doesn't have my WeChat on her phone.
Right.
So I don't talk to my mom.
Yeah.
Even my own mother, and even though she's living in her house, and not to mention other families members, because they're all living under the fear, because in their head, talking with someone abroad will destroy their life, like many of them, because there are so many cases, so many testimonies. You will see that people are in a prison or concentration camp just because they spoken with people abroad. So it's why they're afraid. They want to just peace of freedom, peace of mind. That's why nobody is able to contact with abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems that we have quite a quiet audience, and we only have about 5 minutes left. Oh, Ingrid has just messaged me that there's a couple of questions that I haven't seen. So if you would please put them in the chat box, I can raise them now. Okay, here's one. This is for Shayida. Says it's a known fact that many people are still afraid to speak up, and thinking about as a result of thinking about their families. So worried about retaliation, I guess, to their families. And questioner wants to know what you would say to them. What sort of advice?
Before speaking up, every day I spent was, regret or feeling awful because of not able to do anything for anyone who is suffering back home. And also, even though I don't know how is my rest of the family situation going on, but I believe this is the action that I need to take. Otherwise, it will be too late to do something for my loved ones, and they are in a difficult situation. But I believe this is also what they want to do if they were in my case. Who's grown up in the diaspora, we know how the severity of the issue that they're speaking up against China, but as Sister Rushan has mentioned, it's already late, and we cannot stay silent anymore.
And Rushan, I'll give you the last question. I actually think this is a good one to end on. You've been doing so much activism work, but people are still not seeing concrete action, which is something that you've alluded to as well. So do you still have hope that we can make an impact to get other countries to act and not just worry or sort of vocally express condemnation of the situation? So what level of hope do you have for the future as far as like policy action from other countries?
Thanks, Megha. Well, the hope is the only thing we have, so we cannot lose that. We have to hold on to any kind of the little bit of hope that we see, the silver lining from any kind of actions from the international communities. So yes, it is an uphill battle. We are a tiny groups fighting the massive CCP, and whose influence is everywhere, manipulating and buying out. And yet we see that one person makes a huge difference, like Dr. Adrian Zanz, whose research has been so impactful on the realities of the forced labor and atrocities. And he's being sued for economic damages by CCP, as you see. This is a good indication of the work is having the impact. So, of course, we are heartbroken that the response is slow. Still, we don't see a lot of actions, but we cannot give up. Now we must demand better from all of our world leaders, and we must keep pushing for more than lip service. The Chinese regime should be cut off from having a seat at the table at the any kind of, any government, any conversation, especially the world community should stand up and re-examine the Chinese regime's seat at the United Nations Human Rights Council. So we should demand nothing less. Please stay in touch with organizations like ours for concrete ways to get involved. So each of us have a responsibility now. When you think about, I cannot emphasize enough the 13 tons of human hair from Uyghur women, Uyghur people. We know what that hair represents, a very physical representation of never again happening again. That is a representation of genocide. So we cannot emphasize enough. No, we cannot wait for the mass executions and gas chambers. How can anyone with a soul remain silent right now, knowing all this? So do not make Uyghurs a human collateral for economic trade and short-term politics. Mm. And also, this is not just a calamity of the Uyghurs. This is a test for humanity. And because of the painful mistakes of the history, we can recognize what's happening. So we will call on each individual and the leaders worldwide to carry forward with the integrity to hold China accountable for its crimes and to act swiftly to intervene, or our late action will be too late. It's already late, but we must stop the continuation of this genocide because the future of the world is at stake. Thank you.
I think that is a very good place to end this, as our time is short. Once again, a huge thanks to the Rafto Foundation for Human Rights and the Norwegian Uyghur community, the Norwegian Uyghur Committee for organizing this event, and especially thank you to our panelists. I do think it's important to remember that for activists like the both of you, this is work that you do and energy that you put into, but it's also extremely personal. It's both of your families, and I deeply admire the emotional effort that you put in every day to advocate for people, including your own families, and we really thank you for that. So thank you very much. I'm sure if you have other questions, both of them would be delighted to answer by email or other means afterward.
Thanks, Megha.
Thank you. Okay, take care.